Hi guys, welcome to the show. My name is Seb Ostrovich, aka the Voice of the People, and this is the Weightlifting House Podcast. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Weightlifting House Podcast with your host, Seb Ostrovich, the Voice of the People. This week, actually, I'm not going to be the host. So, as I've mentioned before, I was away all of last week in Kazakhstan, and as such, I really didn't have a lot of time to be able to connect with Glenn. And so, what I've done is I spoke to my good friend Joshua Gibson, who runs the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast, and I was on that podcast a little while ago as a guest. I had a fantastic time. We spoke about the past, present, and future of Weightlifting House, as well as generally how I see the sport of weightlifting, everything I think is going to happen in the future, some of the benefits of understanding the history of our sport, and kind of where I see everything I'm doing and where that's all going to go with Weightlifting House. So what I've done is I've spoken to Josh. He's a tremendous guy. He does a tremendous podcast, by the way. If you're in need of another weightlifting podcast, I cannot recommend it highly enough. But he basically said, I'm okay to take that. I'm okay to re-upload it. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm assuming that where some of you may well have already listened to that podcast before, the majority of you probably haven't, because I'd imagine we probably have different audiences, both Josh and myself. So I had an amazing time. I've done a few podcasts before on other people's podcasts, and this was by far and away the best one I did. I think probably just because it was my first one, and I had a great time just because of that. I think hopefully if you just give it a few minutes, you'll kind of start to understand the passion and enthusiasm, and probably quite deep thoughts that I have about weightlifting, and you'll kind of be hopefully drawn into the conversations that Josh and I get involved in. So anyway, without much further ado, here's the podcast. If, by the way, you do enjoy it and you want to follow more of Josh, you can find his podcast. It's called the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. You can find it on iTunes, you can find it on YouTube, you can find it on SoundCloud, and he tends to do less frequent episodes than I do, but he interviews some really, really great guests on there. So follow him at the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. Guys, thanks once again for tuning in, and I will leave you with the podcast.
Hey guys, Joshua Gibson here with the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. On episode 14, I was joined by Seb Ostrovich. Seb is the founder of Weightlifting House, which was created with the sole purpose of bringing the sport of weightlifting in all of its forms closer to the fans. This is done through weekly podcasts, training equipment, athlete interviews, weekly news shows, and articles. Seb has a background in athletics, competing in and playing many sports growing up, but eventually finding weightlifting and never turning back. This led him to getting a degree in sports science, studying the sport to no end, and teaming up with Glenn Pinlay to produce the best weightlifting content available. So what's going on, guys? Joshua Gibson here with the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. This is episode 14, and today we are joined by the face of Weightlifting House, Seb Ostrovich. Now, did I pronounce the last name correctly?
You actually did. That was pretty good. I get a lot of people getting that wrong. I get a lot of Ostrovitsky, even though it doesn't even look like that at all. I think people decide I'm going full Eastern European on that last name, or I get like an Ostrowski or something. But you got it pretty good. It's Ostrovich, yeah.
Yeah, and unluckily for me, in the sport of weightlifting, almost everything is difficult to pronounce. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's how I feel, because I do the news show, and the number of times I have to pronounce a name, and I have no idea if I'm getting it right. But, I do my best.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about your news show, though, is it introduces me to a lot of weightlifters that I've never heard of. A lot of the Iranian weightlifters I've never heard of.
Oh, really?
And they're really strong guys.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think in the UK, not so much, but in America, I guess you're kind of in a bubble where you've got some pretty decent lifters, and there's so much that goes on social media with those lifters that you can spend your time just completely engrossed with the USA lifters, and you don't need to explore outside of that. But in the UK, we have, our best lifter would come 7th at USA Nationals, maybe in the 94 kilo class. So like I had to look elsewhere for lifters. So I started off with the USA, following the John Norse, Donny Shankles of the world, and from then I just moved on, and Iran, China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Georgia. Wherever there are good weightlifters, that's where I'm going.
Now, why do you think the lifters in the UK aren't nearly as good as the lifters in the US? And then why do you think the US is lagging behind the other countries?
I mean, I think the reason why the UK isn't as good as the USA is, I mean, it's funny. There are two reasons. I think the main one is it's a numbers game. We just don't have the numbers that you guys have, which is funny because I know that in USA you say we don't have the numbers that China has, but there are levels to it, and I think we're pretty low down on that level. I mean, a year or two ago, I think a guy won the 77s with like a 125, 155 wow. or something, which, that's, I mean, we also have a 77 now who does like 145, 180. So he's pretty good, but
yeah.
There are points where, we really don't do that well. So I think numbers is the main thing. The more people you have in the sport, the more competition there is. And, competition is, the backbone of any great training system. It's the backbone of the Bulgarian system. It's what produces the highest level of competition. So we're lacking that somewhat, but I hope with what I do, my plan is to improve that basically and get more exposure in the UK. And then in the US, gosh, I mean, I think you have more talented athletes than we have here. And I don't even think that's an excuse. I really believe it. I think that the USA has, I mean, I spoke with Max Ater on the podcast recently about this. You've got so much greater genetic diversity than we have here. And I don't understand the physiology of it or the genetics of it, but I think that just means that you have better weightlifters. Mm-hmm. I mean, the athletes that you guys have compared to us is absurd. Right. You have some amazing athletes over there. Yeah. I mean, in other sports, not just weightlifting, particularly in other sports, but they're finding their way into weightlifting now in the USA as well.
Right. So do you have a sport in the UK where you have like particularly great athletes?
Cycling.
Okay.
I think is probably our best sport. We win all the medals in the Olympics of that, either long distance or track. I mean, it's funny. It's not like a sport that we go out and we talk about. We just happen to be really good at it. We're decent at cricket, but that's because most countries don't play it. I'm trying to think of it. I mean, football, I guess, because it's like the national pastime. Or you guys call it soccer. Soccer. That's like our biggest sport. I mean, everyone plays that. I don't play it. I don't know anything about it anymore. I lost interest in it. But yeah, the sports where we have the most numbers, that's the sports where we do the best. And I think that's just the case anywhere around the world.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said cycling and like endurance sports. So I wonder if that's kind of like an ode to just the basic physiology of a lot of the people in the UK having, slower twitch muscle fibers or like a majority of slow twitch muscle fibers.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I know that we did a big bid a few years ago. I think our Olympic committee did a big bid for cycling and got a load of money for a talent development scheme. And so what they did was I studied this I did a sports science degree similar to you. And one of the things that we learned in some random module that we did was they got all the athletes who almost made it in sports that were similar to cycling. So, we're very good at rowing. I should have said rowing. I think that's where we win maybe the most medals. They looked at all the rowers who didn't quite make it because, rowing is such a similar sport to cycling and the fact that it's cardiovascular, but you need strong legs. Mm-hmm. So they took those guys and they said, look, you haven't made it, but we can bring you into cycling, very quickly turn you around, and we'll get you a gold medal in that way. So they reached out to various different sports, took the stragglers, made them all live in the same city. And because of that, we very quickly, within a couple of years, got the best cycling team in the world.
Wow, that's actually really fascinating. And so just talking to you a bit earlier, you said that you were a rower. So maybe you could give us a bit of a background about maybe your education. You kind of touched on it, and then your competitive experiences, and then we'll kind of get into weightlifting.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't expect to be talking about cycling on the weightlifting show. That's a new one for me. So, I mean, I was always sporty. I always enjoyed sport. At school, I played, football, rugby, tennis. I was on the athletics team, cross-country team, basically everything I could. But I found very quickly that much preferred the training for sports than I did actually competing in the sports. I loved the process of going to the gym. So when I was like 13 years old, I would sneak into the school gym before school. I wasn't supposed to be in there, but I'd be the only one there, and I would just bench press because I thought that was the thing to do. I actually remember when I was 9 years old, I went to a sleepover at a friend's house, and I snuck some like 6-kilo dumbbells into my bag. And I took them to his house, and he was like, "So what do you want to do?" And I was like, "Well, man, I've got these dumbbells, like, kind of want to work out." And he said, "Why?" I said, I don't know, but it's like I've just been drawn to working out. I had no idea why I wanted to do it. Like, I was 9. I didn't care how I looked. I wanted to work out for some reason. So yeah, I always preferred the training side of things. Finished playing rugby when I left school, and then I found CrossFit, which was like, I read about it, and I just realized that you could train 5 times a day, and I thought, well, that's the sport for me. Like, the more training I can do, the better. And within the first 2 weeks of CrossFit, I decided I'm going to go and win the games. And to do that, I have to be able to snatch over 100 kilos. So I just said, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months. And 6 months, I will be able to become a really good weightlifter. And it's been 5 years. And here I am, still weightlifting, never going to go back to CrossFit, and just on the pursuit of being a weightlifter. And that's basically it. Like, I fell in love with it, and there's something about it that just keeps pulling me back. I can't leave the sport of weightlifting now. It's everything.
Yeah, that's one of the most fascinating stories I've probably ever heard. And I actually had a similar experience in high school where I would kind of go to the gym during lunchtime and just work out. I didn't play any sports. It was just some kind of interest to just lifting weights.
I understand, man.
And I guess weightlifting kind of gets all those scragglers, people that weren't all-stars in sports because they didn't have those same opportunities that great athletes did.
100%, yeah.
Now, did that kind of influence what degree you kind of went after in school, or?
Yeah, I mean, I finished school and I had no idea what to do, so I moved to France for a year and studied there just for something to do. So I studied French in France, studied at a French uni actually, dropped out of that uni, went to a university here and did French and Italian, which is when I rode, and I decided I didn't like that either, so I dropped out of my second university and went to the one where I eventually finished, and I did sport and exercise science because I realized that you can actually do that. And I enjoyed it. I mean, education in the classic sense is, I've kind of realized over time that it's not made for me. I've learned so much more listening to podcasts and reading texts that I want to read rather than going to lectures and stuff. But I did a sports and exercise science degree. I did enjoy it. I think it was pretty valuable few years. And I would say it's been just over a year since I finished. I think I've learned more in the last 15 months than I did in the 3 years at university.
Yeah, that was one of my follow-up questions. Did you gain any skills from your formal education that maybe you couldn't get from just being in the gym? Maybe some thinking skills or some kind of like reading skills or something?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I learned was how to be more critical in thinking. And how, it's funny, I remember one lecturer say to me, I mean, he'd probably be disappointed if he realized this is the only thing I took from him, but he was a nutrition lecturer, and he said that one of the things that you should learn is that when someone asks you a question, it's okay to say to them, I don't know, but I know how to find it out. And I think that's something that I learned. I just learned that if you don't know something, there are so many resources out there that you can look to, that you can find things out. Like, you don't need to know everything. I mean, I'm continually amazed by Glenn Pendlay from the team. I mean, yesterday someone said to him, what's more important, pulls or deadlifts? And he said he didn't know. And I just thought, like, how crazy is that? That he's like the best coach in America, or has been, produced 100 national champions, and he's okay in saying that he doesn't know something. So yeah, I mean, I just know I've learned far more, I think, from listening to materials that I want to listen to, from reading weightlifting texts, the old Soviet literature, that kind of thing, than I did studying. I mean, my degree was very sciencey based. It was all about molecules and metabolism, and we got no real practical understanding of coaching and sports.
Right. So before I kind of get into weightlifting, I have a question that I ask everyone.
Of course.
Now, what is the most difficult aspect of training for yourself and then for people that you've coached? So this can be anything, really.
Yeah. That's a great question. For me, and I think this makes sense based on how I've always trained. It's doing too much. I can't. I mean, at the moment, I'm a little bit injured, so I don't fall fault to that. But in the past, I think the thing that's stopped me from progressing as quickly as I could was the fact that I trained too much and I trained too hard. Which is funny because you get all these motivational people saying, like trainers, train 12 hours a day, max out your squats 3 times a day, and all this stuff. And that's how you get good. And like I did that. I remember I went through a phase where I maxed out my back squat twice a day for 3 months, put 20 kilos on my squat, and then as a result got injured for 6 months. So, I trained too hard and I didn't train wisely enough. I often think that if I'd have just done a little bit less and not overworked myself, I'd be far better than I am now. Maybe I'd be snatching my clean and jerk now. I don't know. But doing too much for me is the main thing. And then for the people that I coach, I don't know if they feel this, but the thing that I worry about with them is that they get too emotionally attached to a bad day of training. And I get worried that they're going to have a bad day and they're not going to understand why, and they're going to want to quit the sport. Whereas because I was so obsessed with it, nothing could happen that would ever make me quit the sport. And because most of them have come from CrossFit, every day in CrossFit is kind of like a good day. Mm-hmm. Like everyone in CrossFit PRs random things because they never push their strength training quite as hard as we do. So like I'll see someone go in and they're like, oh yeah, I maxed out my squat and got a 15 kilo PR. And it's just like, were you not trying? Like, were you not training hard? How does that happen? So yeah, I worry that they're going to drop out the sport because they don't realize how hard it is and how there are more bad days in weightlifting than there are good days.
Yeah,
but if you look at the macro, not the micro, everything gets better.
So is that, I want to say that was your podcast recently I listened to that you said one workout won't make a difference. It's a string of workouts over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting concept, and actually used that. I had an athlete that missed a set on back squat, and you have to kind of explain it like that. Like, yeah, you could hit a PR on every single lift this workout. The only thing it's going to do is change your percentages for the rest of the program. That's the only impact it's going to have. Yeah,
I mean, I think Max said that. Max Zeta said that on the podcast recently, and Glenn said that. It's that, you hear people and they say like, oh, I had this absolutely epic workout. It was huge. I did 10 sets of 10, and then I did this and this, and it's just like, I don't care. That's not cool. Like, that's not cool. Like, what's cool is coming in 5 or 6 days a week, doing 5x5 back squat 2 sessions a week, and doing that for 3 years. Like, that's cool. That's impressive. That's how you gain real strength. Strength is not an event. You don't get strong one time. You get it by training. It's a process. It's one session after another, gradually building or waiving in intensity, gradually building and waiving in volume, and not doing stupid things like 10 sets of 10 or 3 maxed out back squat sessions a day for 3 months like I did. Like, training is a process, and you've got to kind of commit yourself to that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've noticed working with Glenn particularly is none of the workouts are like so difficult that I end up puking from the intensity of it. But just over time, the effect of week after week after week is what kind of breaks you down more than anything. So I think that's the thing CrossFit does wrong is every single workout pushes you to failure. Yeah. Instead of just kind of, like you said, undulating or waving that intensity and kind of having lighter workouts, heavier workouts, moderate workouts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to the weightlifting thing, what kept you going? Yeah. Because you said you've been doing it for 5 years. So that's a really long time to stick to one sport.
It's a while. I mean, I still want to be a national champion, and that's the truth of it. Like, I don't feel like I've achieved anything that I would consider good in the sport of weightlifting. I mean, I snatched 100 kilos after a year and a half, I think. And that, I mean, it's funny. Like, I still, even though I can hang power snatch that now, but I still consider that my biggest achievement almost in my life, because the amount of work that I put and the dedication that I put just to hit that first 100 kilos, I probably worked harder for that than I ever did any exam that I ever took. I mean, that was a proud moment for me. But I just keep coming back because there's well, it's not even coming back. I've never left.
Right.
I think that any man who starts weightlifting, when they turn 20, can snatch 150 kilos, especially if you're, weigh 100 kilos like I do, or I do now. I didn't used to when I started. I was really skinny, but, that is possible. I don't think you have to be a complete genetic freak to snatch 150 kilos. 170 kilos, maybe, to do what Colin Burns and Wes Kitts in the USA are doing now. Like, I probably won't ever snatch 170 kilos, but 140, yeah, I could do that. 150, maybe. And so the fact that I'm not there is just, I can't leave the sport telling someone that my best lifts were 130, 160. Right. I mean, that's just, in my head, that's just not acceptable. That's not good enough after 5 and eventually 10, 15 years in the sport. I can't leave with those numbers. They're just not good enough.
So at what point did you meet Glenn Pinley and start working with him, doing the podcast and developing Weightlifting House?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you know what? Before I say that, do you feel the same with weightlifting? Like, why do you keep doing it?
It's just so much a part of me. I couldn't not do it. I just have to go to the gym. Like I was telling my girlfriend the other day, right before I go to bed at night, I cannot stop thinking about weightlifting or strength training and just getting strong. Like I want to wake up in the morning and just go train. I want to read about training. Yeah. It's just this obsessive focus, and I can't get away from it. I really don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I notice I have this issue when I'm speaking to someone, and it looks like I'm listening to them, and I'm thinking to myself, why right now when I'm standing here do I feel like the weight of my feet is slightly over on the left and not on the right, and is that going to impact my squats tomorrow?
Wow.
Like the most bizarre thing, and I'm thinking about it. But it interests me. Like, I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by why my left foot is everted and my right foot is inverted. Or not inverted, I have eversion and eversion or whatever. And I'm fascinated by why one leg is slightly internally rotated and why one is externally rotated. Or why, while I'm driving, I have a tendency to internally rotate my right leg. Like, these tiny little things just take up my mind. And when I'm talking to someone, the chances are that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about training. I'm thinking about biomechanics. I'm not thinking about politics or something like that. I think I'm kind of like you. I have no interest in anything outside of the sport of weightlifting.
Yeah, and the thing that, I mean, it's a great sport. I love it. But the problem is all this time we put into it, I don't think it has very much carryover to any other aspect in terms of like developing a career, creating like a large enough income to live off of. Like, pretty much all you do is going to impact a very small amount of people, and it's just going to be for your internal satisfaction,
Yeah. I mean, I agree to some extent, but I'm trying to change that. I think it has been impossible to make a living off it. And I mean, obviously, we both know you can make a living off it if you are happy to just make very little and just do a bit of coaching, which is that's what I'm doing now. I mean, right now I'm living in a deficit where I'm probably losing a few $100s every month, working through my savings just so that I can spend all day trying to build up Weightlifting House so that eventually I can turn it into something that, runs itself, makes money, and allows me the freedom to coach people, pay them a full-time weightlifting salary, develop a professional weightlifting team, and actually add something to the world of weightlifting. I don't think it's impossible to do. I'm not business-minded naturally, but I'm trying to learn that kind of thing. But I think it's possible, and that's, the fact that it is possible means that I can't not give it a go.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if I knew it wasn't possible, I wouldn't. I'd find something else. But knowing that there's a chance I can live a life where I can coach people full-time and have enough money, that's too good to pass up on the opportunity.
Right. And I think you found this little niche where you're supplying each different area of like each different country of the world with an opportunity to understand weightlifting all around the world. So like, as I was saying before the podcast, like I didn't know much about Iranian weightlifting. I didn't know much about maybe like Georgia's weightlifting team, but through Weightlifting House, you've developed that exposure. And I think like that's something that is really special. And I think you could really develop something big.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's, you know, you've got a few companies. So you've got someone like Caffeine and Kilos, and it's about like, they're about like looking cool in weightlifting. And that's great. Like, I mean, trust me, I have 4 Caffeine and Kilos t-shirts. I'm trying to get the whole set. Like, I like it a lot. It's cool. And then there's, you know, Juggernaut Training Systems. They're great. They put out a lot of information. I read all their articles. I listen to all their podcasts. It's cool. But I'm trying to develop a place for people who are just obsessed. Like, I mean, the fact that it found you quickly, which is perfect because you're obsessed. And there are these other weightlifters who are just obsessed. We spend our day, we wake up and we think about weightlifting. The highlight of the day is going to the gym to train. We're thinking about what we can do for the next one, how we could have improved that. I mean, I'm trying to create a home for weightlifters, for people who are genuinely obsessed and want to know more. Like, I want to have articles that are insightful. I mean, that's why I've asked you to do some writing, because you're a good writer and you know a lot. I want to provide content for people who just can't consume enough, basically.
Yeah. Sometimes when I put out some information or like an article, I'm just almost confused why more people don't want to read it, just because I'm so interested in it. I'm like, wow, this is such a great topic. Like, this is how to get your squat bigger. Like, why don't more people want to know this? And I'm like, oh yeah, they have their own jobs and they have their own hobbies and they enjoy, you know, going out to the movies on Sunday nights, you know.
Mm-hmm. But there is a community. I mean, I've kind of realized from starting Weightlifting House, I get a bunch of people. I mean, I don't know how many people follow me altogether, but there's a tight-knit community within it who are just obsessed. Like, the number of people I get now who send me, you know, Pielashenko clean jerks 210, just because, like, as soon as he posted it, they've seen it and they've sent it to me and they just want to talk about it and like, what do you think about this? And like, the fact that I can do that, that's epic. Like, I just want to be able to talk about weightlifting. I mean, the fact that I'm sat here right now on a Wednesday and it's 3:40 p.m. and all I've done today is record the news show, do a little bit of online writing of training programs, and now I'm sat here talking to you about weightlifting and a bunch of people are going to listen to it. Like, that's everything to me. It's everything to me. I absolutely love it.
Right. Yeah. And it's just I got to try and keep us on topic a little bit. So the Pinley weightlifting camp, I think that was sort of the big moment for Weightlifting House, where you built that relationship with Glenn. Can you explain maybe where you were right before that and like what happened when you connected with Glenn?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of interesting. I was living in a house of weightlifters. There were 6 of us. And I guess I knew everyone the year before, and I said to all of them, do you all want to live together? And we basically decided, you know, they didn't all know each other, but they all knew each other eventually through me. So we all lived together and we were all a house of weightlifters. And that's where I kind of thought of the idea, we are Weightlifting House. Maybe we can, you know, turn this into some weightlifting reality TV show. But, you know, we made a few videos, nothing really happened. We got a few views, but it kind of died there and then. And as the year went on and everyone started applying for jobs for the real world, I kind of realized, like, I can't do a 9 to 5. Like, I will regret it my whole life. I've said to my family for a long time that if I end up sitting in an office from 9 to 5, I can officially say to myself, well done, you gave up. So I needed a way to get out of the potential of that happening. So I just messaged Glenn because I knew that MDUSA had finished. And I messaged him and said, Glenn, here's a video of me and my friends lifting. Do you want to start, you know, Cal Strength Volume 2? I'll move out to America and coach full time. And I'll just train. I'll get a little job somewhere, and that's all I want to do. And about 5 months later, he replied, because you know how he is with technology. And he said, look good, come out to the Penley camp, and we'll sort something. So I told my friends, we all flew out, and before I left, I said to everyone, I said to my girlfriend, I said to my parents, that whatever happens, I'm not going to come back without having something set up. I mean, at this point, Weightlifting House was dead. Nothing was happening. I hadn't touched it for months. I had no real intention of bringing it back, but I knew that I couldn't leave Kansas. I couldn't leave the US without something set up for the future with Glenn. It was too good an opportunity to pass up. So when I was out there, I just said, Glenn, you need to do a seminar tour in the UK. I'll set up everything for you. I'll contact every gym. I'll set up all the seminars. I'll do the money. I'll look at flights. I'll give you somewhere to live. I'll transport you. And he said, all right, do it. So like I got back home. I made a website. I messaged every gym I could find, and I was like, guys, Glenn Pendlay's coming. We need this. And I had a bunch of gyms say yes, let's do it. So I messaged Glenn. I said, Glenn, you've got interest. I think we can do this. And then he said to me, he dropped a real bomb. He said, okay, that's cool. Can you drive me everywhere? I didn't know how to drive. I was 23 and I couldn't drive. But obviously I said yes. I told him I had a car. I didn't have a car. I didn't even know how to drive. And he's coming in 2 months. So I had some money saved up. So I just called up as many driving schools as I could and just said, I need to learn how to drive. Like now. I need 20 hours of driving lessons. And I've got to drive, I've got to pass my test in 2 months. Found somewhere, spent all my money on it, bought a car, got insured just in time, and then Glenn turned up, did the tour, and whilst he was here with me, he said those words which kind of, were the best things he could have said. He said, I've been wanting to do a podcast again, and I haven't really found anyone who I think would be able to talk enough about weightlifting, who's obsessed as weightlifting as me, so do you want to do one? And right there and then, that was a dream come true. And I said yes, obviously, and he said, all right, you need a website. Do you have a name? And I said, well, I used to do this thing called Weightlifting House. He said, that's great, bring it up. And I just kind of went from there. I know I went on along that. I can talk and talk, man.
No,
you'll have to shut me up when it's time for me to stop talking.
No, that's great, especially for a podcast. I think this is exclusive information heard nowhere else. Like I had no idea this happened, and I've listened to every Weightlifting House podcast, and
I appreciate
this is awesome. I'm sure the listeners are going to get a kick out of this. Now,
so
what do you think makes Glenn's coaching so special and so different that it can create this huge boom wherever he goes? Like, what do you think it is?
Something I like about his programming is that it's not fancy. It's just hard work. Mm-hmm. I remember Max later posted something on Instagram as a joke. He said something like, if you're not doing sets of 9 in your programming, you're missing out. You've got to do 9s. And he was joking, of course. And then I go into Reddit weightlifting, because that's what I do. And someone posted a news thread saying, does anyone here do 9s? And I realized that person had seen Max's post and taken it seriously and thought, God, I need to do sets of 9. That's the thing. And I like the fact that with Glenn's programming, he doesn't mess about with, new fads. It's just if you got to get strong, we're going to squat, and we're going to squat more than you realized you could have squatted. You're going to deadlift. I mean, the amount of deadlifting that was in the last cycle is more than any weightlifting program I've ever seen had. Before you joined up, we didn't do the deadlifting, but we did, 3 sets of 10 on the glute ham 3 or 4 times a week, 3 sets of 10 hip extension loaded as heavy as you can go 2 or 3 times a week. Just hardcore work, just snatch, clean jerk, back squat, deadlift, push press. Those are the staples of every program he writes. And he just makes you do more than you kind of could have realized you could have done. And, a few weeks in, a lot of people drop out. It's upsetting for me because I kind of work on the behind the scenes kind of things, getting things set up and taking in payments. And it's upsetting because, I could be making money if all these people were staying, but people try it and it's too hard. And I think they want the 10s and they want the banded split squats on a Bosu ball. And Glenn doesn't give it to them. He gives them 5 sets of 5. at like, I mean, I remember at one point he had the audacity to program for me 5 sets of 5 at 90% of my 1 hour. I mean, like, what is that? I mean, he doesn't do that anymore, but he did that for me because he just wanted to push me. And I mean, I got 1 set and it was my PR set of 5, and then I failed miserably on the rest of it. But it's just, he just gives you hard work, and that's what I like about it. I just love hard work. The harder the program for me, the happier I am.
That's interesting you say that. I hadn't back squatted in a while before I started working with Glenn, and I had to just do a projected max. So I picked like 182 kilos, 400 pounds.
Yeah.
And
That's my max.
Well, that's funny.
But it's actually 182.5, so I got you by half.
He ended up doing that
Unless
same
you
thing.
beat.
Oh, sorry. He ended up doing that same thing he did to you, where he programmed 5x5 at 90% of my 1 rep max.
Oh man, yeah.
And it was easy. That's what's
Really?
crazy about it. I smoked it. And
yeah, man, your training is going phenomenally at the moment. I must say. I just got to take this opportunity to say that I'm impressed with your lifting and your progress. That triple front squat you did, 158.
Yeah,
I was admiring.
I appreciate it, man. That's one thing I've always neglected, and I love about Glenn is just the basics. Get big with the basics, get strong with the basics. Sometimes I get too caught up in with variations of the lifts and like pause squats and tempo squats and all this fancy
I've been
stuff.
there, man. Yeah, I've been there. I think it's because for me, strength doesn't come easily. You know,
Sure.
I'm not naturally strong, and I think it's probably the same with you. Like, you move so well, but you're not back squatting 250 kilos.
Right.
And so because of that, and because I and you are so obsessed with trying to become good, we spend all of our time reading, trying to learn all the different ways of how to do it. I mean, like, I get obsessed with different coaches. You know, I got obsessed with John Brose. I got obsessed with Max Ater. I got obsessed with a bunch of Russian coaches. You know, I got obsessed with the Soviet training system. I got obsessed with Louis Simmons. And then you kind of come back to a bit of Glenn's training, and it's just, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's just like, I don't need to do dynamic effort days. I don't need to do this and that. I just got to train hard, and progress eventually comes. But yes, I mean, strength is, I say it all the time to everyone, strength is the most important thing in weightlifting.
Yeah, and Glenn thinks that so much that he's going to put that on a T-shirt and sell it.
Yeah, I mean, he won't mind me saying this, but he is, when it comes to technology or creating like a logo for a T-shirt, he is hands down maybe the worst person I've ever met, that kind of thing. He asked me to post something on his Instagram yesterday, so I did it, and then he said, "Have you posted it?" "Yes." "Can I see it?" It's like, "Yeah, just go on your Instagram." And he's like, "Well, I can get on my Instagram, but I don't know how to see my pictures." And I'm just like, so I have to email him his Instagram photo. And this is all day. Like, I'm speaking to him all day because he doesn't know how to do this stuff. But yeah, he's got it in his head that he's going to make this T-shirt.
Yeah.
And, I really hope that it goes well. I really hope so.
Yeah, and just to kind of, I mean, we'll plug all this later on, but Glenn is a coach, and I live in a different state, obviously, but he's very hands-on. He always talks to everyone, you know, and he actually gave me a call this weekend to talk about the programming, and that's just something you don't get. And honestly, I was surprised by how cheap it is working with him.
Yeah. I mean, you're on the one-on-one stuff, aren't you? With him? Yeah. I mean, he is good, I suppose, with how much he charges. It doesn't cost too much. And I mean, that's one thing I've definitely noticed is the number of people he'll just message and he'll say, "Here's my number, just call me."
Yeah.
Or like I'm posting something on his Instagram and I happen to see someone message him and it says, I'd love to join the team. I live in blah, 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 Kansas somewhere. And Glenn says, "Well, you're only 2 hours. I'd love for you to come to my gym and I'll coach you for a session." Like, he's not going to charge for that.
Right.
He's just like, I mean, he's like me and you plus 20 years. Like, he is just obsessed. He's so obsessed. If he can spend all of his day coaching anyone with weightlifting, like, he'll coach a 6-year-old woman to hit a 25 kilo clean and jerk PR, and he is just buzzing. Like, he just loves it. He's so obsessed with the sport, just gaining strength, setting PRs. It's crazy.
Right. And so we got up to the point of you meeting Glenn and developing kind of what you have currently. So after you met Glenn, you started putting out the podcast, and now you're starting to put out clothing and equipment. So what are your plans for Weightlifting House? What, where do you see yourself eventually besides, the Instagram account and the podcast?
Yeah. Okay. So the overall goal, I want to I want to own the first professional weightlifting team in the UK. So it's never happened before. The USA had it happen once with Glenn and MBD USA, where he actually paid his athletes a full salary. So I want to be at a point where I can run a competition in the UK. A bunch of people turn up, and the top 15 places get paid $20,000 a year or whatever to come and train full time, and I'm the head coach. That's my goal. I want to be able to do that. I mean, for the selfish reason that I can't see myself doing anything other than coaching for the rest of my life and competing, of course. So that's eventually where I want it to get to. And I think the way of doing it is, I'm testing out a bunch of things right now. I'm doing the podcasting, which I love. That's my favorite thing, really. It's the thing that I've always wanted to do. But I'm trying out t-shirts. Glenn and I have some big plans of things that we're releasing, which I don't know when you're going to put this up. Well, actually, when are you going to put it? Because I might be able to say now if it's not going up for a while. No. But if it's going up today, I'll leave it.
I'm definitely putting it up later next week. Probably on Thursday or Friday.
In which case, okay, well, I won't say now, but
wait, I'll delay it.
It's kind of similar to what he did.
As much as I need to. I need to hear this.
I won't. Don't delay it. Just put this up whenever. But it's, based on what Glenn used to do and make money, we're kind of looking to do that same thing again. Okay. And hopefully have Weightlifting House branding on a bunch of stuff, which is going to be cool.
Oh, sure.
So that's kind of like the way that I'm going to be able to kickstart it. And hopefully start making money. I'll be able to open my own gym, and then following that, get some athletes and coach them, and hopefully take them to the Olympics, take them to world champs. And that's a dream, just to be involved in weightlifting and develop the best weightlifting team in the country.
And as far as your athletic goals, you're still planning on competing and trying to make it to nationals.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. When I talk about owning my own weightlifting team to that extent where I'm able to pay athletes, like that's not going to happen in 5, probably even 10. That might take 15, 20 years to do. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I just want to grow Weightlifting House as a somewhere that weightlifters, people as obsessed as me, can go to learn. And I want to just become as good as an athlete as I can. When I'm healthy again, nothing can stop me when I'm training. Like I'm so narrow-minded with my training. I'm kind of fortunate that I've got Weightlifting House to fall back on right now when I'm injured, because otherwise I'd be going completely insane. But I 100% know that I can snatch 150 kilos and clean and jerk 190 kilos. I probably can do more. Whether I will or not is another thing. I think we're all capable of hitting far more than we believe. When I was younger and I listened to John Brose, he said something which stuck with me so much. He said, and I might get this slightly wrong, but he essentially said, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll end up on the top of a mountain. And that, or maybe it was shoot for the moon, if you miss, you'll end up on the stars. But I kind of prefer with you'll end up on the top of a mountain. Like, shoot for something that is just so ridiculous. Shoot for something that is crazy. I remember I said to one of my friends once, I want to snatch 180 kilos. And he started laughing. And I guess that is kind of funny. But pick that goal. I want to clean and jerk 220 kilos. I'm probably not going to. But if I make that my goal, I'm almost certainly going to clean and jerk 180. You know, shoot for something that is absolutely insane and go for it. And you'll end up with far more than you would have done. If I'd have just set 180 as my goal, I probably wouldn't have hit it, because what's that phrase, like the task takes the amount of time that you assign to it or something. Yeah. Like if you give yourself, you know what I mean? So if I say my goal is 180 kilos in my life, it'll probably take me my life to get to it. If I decide I'm going to hit 220, I've only got until the age of 30 to really do it. I probably won't get it, but I'm almost certainly going to hit the 180. And that's how I think it is. You've got to set goals far beyond what you think you probably can actually do.
Right. So what are your numbers currently? And then you kind of touched on your injury a little bit. So what have you learned from experiencing this injury or taking time off that you're going to put into effect when you come back and start training hard again?
Yeah, I mean, within the last year and a half, I've been healthy, honestly, maybe 5 months of that year and a half. It's been appalling. The last time I PR'd my snatch was about 18 months ago, and the last time I PR'd my clean and jerk was 18 months ago. And it's just the most depressing thing. But I hit 115, 141, and those are my numbers, which I think are pretty similar to yours, which is why I'm looking forward to getting healthy, because I feel like you're about to either surpass me or you already are surpassed me, but you're going to keep going on, and I can't let that happen. So I need to get back to being healthy. Because I was on a bit of a roll. I was PRing regularly. And like I said at the start of the podcast, I pushed a little bit too hard and got injured. And I'm just kind of riddled with it at the moment. I can't seem to get myself into a point where I can train for more than a couple of weeks without having to stop and rehab. So, I mean, at the moment, I'm just focused on getting my body better. I'm doing a lot of unilateral work to balance myself out. And the plan is get myself to Kansas in January for the Penley camp, healthy, so that I can actually train for 2 weeks, twice a day, like a professional athlete. Get bit by the bug where I don't need to worry about rehabbing anymore, and then hopefully it'll be plain sailing from there, and I'll snatch 150, clean and jerk 180, and win nationals in a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
That's another thing I've kind of noticed about the Penley WOD Facebook group is seeing these guys with either higher numbers or numbers very similar. There's something in you that just makes you want to lift more than all of them.
Oh, man.
You're very disappointed when they hit PRs. Like, you're excited, but you're like,
yeah,
now I have to PR. Like,
yeah.
Very frustrating.
I mean, there's a guy who I met. I met him at the Penley camp last year called Seth, and he's on the team now.
Yeah.
And he turned up, and I was better than him. And he snatched like 110, and he clean and jerked 140, I think. And as soon as he turned up, I was just like, all right, this is the platform that you're training on. You're training on with me, and we're going head-to-head twice a day. And we did that, and we both it was amazing. We battled back and forth. And then I left, and I got injured shortly after. And I look at him now. He's still on the camp. He's still on the team, and I'm going to see him in a few weeks. And he snatched 125. He's clean and jerked 150, 155. He's jerked 170. And it's great. Like, I love the fact that he's done it, but deep down it pisses me off. Like, I've got a chip on my shoulder, and I'm not happy when people beat me as easily as he's doing right now.
Did he recently clean 160, or did he clean and jerk it? Or
yeah, he cleaned it. I don't think he made the jerk.
Okay.
But yeah, he cleaned it. He's good. His jerk's
something
nice. Of absolute beauty. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think with the jerk, like, you either have it or you can work to try and get it. But some people just naturally have it, and he's one of those people. Like, he does everything right. He really does.
Right. Luckily, I can say I'm blessed with that. If I can clean it, likely it's going over my head, and that's very reassuring for heavy cleans, especially since I don't squat a lot.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, what do they say? Clean for show, jerk for dough. Like, the clean is great, but I mean, there's nothing more demoralizing than going to competition and grinding out a PR clean, and then there's nothing left.
Right.
I mean, it's so cool when you see those guys max effort clean, they stand it up, and then they just ping it, and it just goes overhead, and they've made it. Jerks win world championships. Jerks win the Olympics. You can snatch what you snatch, but it's that final attempt clean and jerk that wins. And in the sport of weightlifting, it's all about winning. And if you can't jerk, you're just not going to win. So I think having your jerk, or Seth's jerk, or Rahimov's jerk, I think that's a pretty good thing to have.
Now, I do have a question. Who is your favorite weightlifter of all time, and who's your favorite weightlifter currently?
I should have prepared for this kind of question. I don't know. Well, I have a bunch of favorite weightlifters. It's kind of cliched, but I'm going to say Ilya. I just love him. I just love. I know some people will dislike me for that, and I'm kind of prepared to take the heat because obviously he's been popped. He's not able to compete right now. He's been popped twice through retroactive tests. But it's more the mentality that he had, the fact that he was unbeaten, and the fact that kind of because no one could beat him, it gave him this aura when he was in the backstage room that it didn't matter what anyone else did; they were all battling for second place. That he walked in. I remember hearing a story that Norik Vardanian said when he competed against him at the Olympics in 2008, or no, 2012. He said Ilya walked in and everyone was quiet and like getting psyched up. He walked in and greeted everyone and then sort of yelled at everyone like, "Come on, guys, let's go have some fun. Let's go hit some PRs. We can do this." I just thought that mentality of, I can say good luck for everyone because we all know I'm winning. Like, it doesn't matter. We all know I'm winning. And
Right.
I just think that's insane.
Yeah.
I love watching lifters like Hysen Palaku or Hisen Palaku. I know, again, I'm picking all these lifters who've been popped. But the reason I like him is because if you saw him in the street, you would very easily believe that he'd never seen a barbell in his life. And when he's pulling on lifts, his knees valgus. It looks awful. And that's kind of why I like it. I love really gritty looking lifters. People who just, they're scrapping for every inch, every kilo. And he's one of those guys. So I like watching him. There were just so many, man.
Yeah.
At the moment, I love the Iranians. Rostami, because of his mindset. I mean, there was a rumor that at the Olympics, he snatched the bar, then he snatched 70, and then he went out with his open at 175.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true, but that's been said by a lot of people that he did that and that he's done that at other competitions. And that's just because, I mean, can you imagine how off-putting that is for Okulov or for Pielashenko or whoever in the back room where they're hitting 150 and 155 and they keep looking over and Rostami's on the bar.
Yeah.
Or they go out and they hit that opener and Rostami snatches 70 kilos. That's so off-putting. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason why he does it. Just to play with people's minds.
Right.
Now,
I don't know if you've ever seen this video. It's John North and
yeah, I've
the
seen it. If it's
you've
John
seen
North, I've seen it.
I
I don't know what you're going to say, but I went through a big John North kick.
Well, it's a vlog he made where
Yeah.
he went out. He went up to the bar and it was 150, and he snatched it without a warm up
Snatched it cold,
any
yeah.
bar work. Yeah, and then he clean and jerked like 170 or 175.
Yeah, it's the competition. Sorry, the training session before the Arnold 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what's your take on that? Do you think that actually happened? Like there was no warm up prior to the max attempt?
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that there was no warm up, but I believe that his reasoning was poor. So if you watch the video, he says something like, "I got so like hyped up on C4, I did what Donnie always said about doing, reacting." And it's like, okay, that makes sense. And he goes, "Therefore, I snatched 150 cold." And it's just like, whoa. How did you get from Donnie saying to react to snatching 150 cold? But to be honest, I mean, John was essentially a meth addict with the amount that C4 that he took back then. I mean, it was crazy. He was so hyped up all the time during the MASH era vlogs. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit it. I mean, some of my friends said I don't think he did. It's a good publicity stunt. I mean, very shortly after he got sponsored by C4, so maybe it was, a good way of getting that deal done. But I wouldn't put it past him. Sure. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, have you heard the story about Yuri Vardanian?
No.
I mean, Yuri Vardanian, for people listening who don't know, second best Sinclair of all time, USSR lifter. If he competed today with his current numbers, he'd destroy any lifter in the world, but very easily. So there's a story that he was in the training hall with all of his Russian buddies, I guess, and they walked into training one morning, and there was 170 kilos loaded on a bar, and everyone on the team said, "Do you reckon you could snatch that cold?" And everyone said no, and he said yes. And they said, "All right, well, we'll give you, 200 rubles, whatever the currency in Russia is, if you snatch it cold." So he went over and he grabbed a bar to start warming up, and they said, no, you can't. You can't even lift the bar first. You've just got to snatch 170. And so Yuri sits down, and in his head, he thinks through the process of warming up with the bar, sitting back down, snatching 70, sitting back down, what everything looks like, all the warm-up attempts. And whilst he's doing this, he's thinking so deeply that he starts sweating. You know, he's literally got himself completely psyched up for this attempt. Then he walks up to 170 and he snatches it cold.
Wow.
And he weighed about 83 kilos at the time. You know, so
that's insane.
I mean, John North is not on the same level as the second best weightlifter ever, but he may well have done the 150 cold. Is all I'm trying to say.
Right.
You know, I wouldn't put it past him.
So I wanted to talk about Ilya's performance in the President's Cup when he hit that winning lift and then went for the world record. I have to say that's probably, for me, the greatest moment in weightlifting that I've ever seen. What do you think is the greatest moment? Do you think it's Matthias Steiner winning the Olympics?
Oh, God.
What's your opinion on that?
No, I don't.
Really?
You know, that Matthias Steiner video is crazy. It's I posted it the other day and it's on 600,000 views right now. Like, it went. I mean, in the weightlifting world, that I think that counts as viral.
Yeah.
It was pretty crazy. But I mean, the best weightlifting moment when Ilya hit the 246. It's funny because I joked he hit 191 snatch, and then I said as a joke to my friends he's going to go 246 to get the total world record because that's a kilo over a ROM now 236. And we all kind of laughed about it. He clean and jerked 231, and then we just saw on the scoreboard 246. And we all just went, no. There's no way this is going to happen. You know, it's going to extend his world record by 4 kilos. It's 10 kilos over the world record from about 4 years ago. And when he made it, I mean, it was insane. But I wouldn't give that the best moment of all time. I think the 2014 105s was obviously amazing with Ilya, Bedzanian, and Nuradinov. 3 world records in 3 minutes. I'm just talking modern day right now. The 2016 77 kilo class when Rahimov jumped to 214 and set a 4 kilo world record after like a 10-year drought in the 77s. I mean, I know a lot of people debate whether that counted, but that was pretty cool. I mean, anything from the 88 Olympics, I mean, essentially, like, that was the pinnacle of drugged weightlifting. So the amount of world records set at that competition was remarkable. I mean, there's just so many amazing moments. It's crazy.
Okay, so if we had a new person that's never been introduced to weightlifting before, what video on YouTube would you direct them to say, this is the sport, and to give them an accurate depiction? So that would probably be one of the greater moments. So anything that's been... anything that's your go-to to get kind of hyped up, or?
Well, you know, when I started, it was Cal Strength because it was more personal. That's the thing that, you know, if you're trying to get someone into the sport, you always have to show them some American weightlifting because it means nothing for them to see a video of Alexei Lovchev snatch 210 kilos for a double in some random training hall in Russia. That doesn't mean anything. They don't know what they're saying. They don't know what the weight means. But if you can watch someone from Cal Strength shit-talking someone else from Cal Strength, lifting some weights, competing because there's $500 on the line, that's fun. That's exciting. They've got like some good tunes in the background. So I'd probably show them something like that. But, I mean, the things that get me are the story. I mean, a comeback story gets me. You know, someone coming back from injury. I mean, did you see that? It was like a 15-minute documentary that the Olympics put out on... oh gosh, I'm completely blanking his name. He won the 62 kilo class at the Olympics. He's from Colombia. Oscar Figueroa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the fact that he came back from, you know, injury, 2 Olympics in a row where he basically couldn't compete. You know, if I'm ever going to tear up, it's from something like that, you know? Like, that's the kind of thing that really gets me, like a motivational story of an athlete. So, gosh, but I mean, best clip on weightlifting. Some sort of Ilya tribute, to be honest. I mean, that gets me going. If I can watch some Ilya, some compilation of Ilya, or something like that, yeah, that's what gets me pretty fired up for training.
Have you seen the Zach? I think it's like Zach Kreitch.
Yeah,
the guy that cleaned with straps and then broke both of his wrists, and then had to come back and became national champion.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean
good one.
that's amazing, and that's a great video. And in fact, the music that's played on that video is the music that I put as the background to the first ever Weightlifting House vlog I ever did.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to think of what it's called now, and it kind of escapes me. But yeah, the funny thing with that is I had an athlete who came to one of my classes the other day, and he cleaned 120 and he kept clocking 130. And I said to him, you can do it. I was trying to build motivational. I said, like, nothing's going to happen. He's a Marine, so I know, like, he's strong-minded. So I thought I can play up to that. And I said, don't be a wimp. Like, at the very least, you've got to try and go under. Like, nothing bad's going to happen. You've got to at least commit to going under. So he commits to going under, doesn't get his elbows through, has 2 bad elbow touches. We both hear like as something tears, and he drops the bar. And it was that Zach Critch moment where I thought he'd broken 2 of his wrists. Fortunately, he hadn't. He just, they were a bit inflamed. But yeah, I mean, for people who haven't seen that Zach Critch video, that's amazing. It's really amazing. The fact that he, they say to him he's never going to be able to even lift a bar again, and then a couple of years later he wins nationals. That's phenomenal. That is really phenomenal.
Yeah. I have to think that's probably one of my favorite videos. And
yeah.
a close second would be Klokov at the 2011 Worlds.
Against Akayev.
Yeah, that's really
phenomenal.
good. That's really good.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Akayev is, people sleep on him. Klokov gets all this hype. Understandably, he's an amazing weightlifter and he looks good. I think that's the main reason he looks so good. People want to look like that, so they follow him. But I mean, the number of people that I hear say, is Klokov the best 105 ever or something like that? He's not even close. He's not even in the top 100 Sinclairs of all time. I don't think. He's certainly not in the top 50. I mean, there are athletes who far surpass his numbers. I mean, his dad, for starters, far surpassed his numbers. But yeah, Akayev is kind of embodies a lot of what I enjoy in the sport, which is unorthodox technique. But because he's so brutally strong, he's able to beat you. And I think in weightlifting, you tend to admire the things that you don't have. So, I mean, technically, I'm pretty decent. Like, I snatch 68% of my back squat. Like I'm technically proficient. So when I see someone who's just brutally strong, that's what I kind of admire because it's what I don't have. Right. So when I watch Akayev clean and jerk 245 kilos in training and snatch 210, 10 kilos over the world record, and he does it without full hip extension, that blows my mind. Just blows my mind.
Right. Yeah. So maybe to listeners that don't know much about weightlifting, can you answer the question of why training numbers are usually always higher for international lifters than competition numbers, and kind of substantially so most of the time?
I mean, there are 2 reasons. One of them is the fact that you can have multiple attempts at heavy weights in training. You can be in your favorite platform with your favorite music. You can be in your home country, and you can have prepared everything right. When you go to the Olympics, you might be on the other side of the world. You've got to compete at a time that maybe you don't normally train at. The food sucks, and all this kind of thing. So the fact that you can be completely, everything can be absolutely perfect for you when you train, that's got to be one of the reasons. The main reason, people might not like it, but it's drugs. I mean, the sport is riddled with drugs. I can't remember who said it. I think maybe I heard it from Donnie Shankel. He said that one man's sport is another man's business. And that's just what most sports have become, and weightlifting has definitely become. Martin Pashov, he was a Bulgarian, he trained at Cal Strength. He said that, weightlifting and drugs was basically a match made in heaven. They kind of go hand in hand. If you could ever develop a sport that would most benefit from taking drugs, other than CrossFit, it would probably be weightlifting. So the fact that a lot of athletes in countries are, they're mid-cycle, they're on a lot of gear. We know that when people compete, not always are they clean, but they're at least on a lower amount of drugs than they train on. That's why we see these huge training lifts. It's you see people lift 5, 10, sometimes more kilos over the world record in training, and then they go and compete and they're 10 kilos under the world record. I mean, that's, they're great athletes. They're great competitors. Like, they're not unable to lift that because they couldn't handle the pressure. I mean, these guys thrive off pressure. They've been competing since they were 6 years old. It's just the fact that they're not as strong because they're not on the drugs that they were on in training.
Yeah, that's a very interesting kind of take on it. So people that like wonder why the U.S. isn't quite where it should be internationally, and then a lot of people point towards drugs. Do you think that's the main reason, or do you think there's something else at play?
I mean, look, if you put Ian Wilson on drugs, I don't think he's going to snatch 201 kilos necessarily. I don't think if you put all the USA lifters on drugs, they're going to win. I think if you think that, that's kind of obnoxious. It's a little bit arrogant. I think it shows a lack of understanding of how sophisticated the training systems and regimes in other countries are and how much a part of the country and the culture it is. I mean, you've got someone like Harrison Maris, who I think is the most underrated lifter in the US. He's already setting senior American records and youth world records. He just clean and jerked 195 kilos. He's 16 years old and he's a 77 kilo lifter. You give him a lot of drugs, I mean, he'll clean and jerk over 210 in training. He will. Like, I believe that he would. I think he maybe could set a world record. You know, that's possible. But most lifters in the US, if you give them drugs, they'll be better, of course. You know, they're going to snatch more. But taking a 170 snatcher to a 200 kilo plus snatcher, or taking someone, I mean, a lot of 94 kilo lifters in the US struggle to clean and jerk 200 kilos. The fact that people think that they're going to clean and jerk 233, 234 to beat Ilya, to beat, you know, Simon Kalecki, someone like that, it's just, I don't think it's going to happen. I think that you've got to start training from a younger age. I think the US has the capability to do it. You have amazing athletes, but they're in different sports.
So do you think a lot of people in the U.S. That are weightlifting are currently on drugs? Like, how prevalent do you think it actually is?
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
I think that most lifters in the U.S. are not on drugs. You know, back in the day, there was a lot... Everyone used to say that the USA was like the best clean country in the world. And I think whilst you can make a case for there are some countries who are clearly on a lot of drugs and there are some that just aren't, I think maybe the USA was one of the better of those countries, but I don't think that the USA is entirely clean anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and your listeners have probably all seen Icarus, the Netflix documentary that came out. I mean, it showed just how basic cheating can be. Like, there's a hole in the wall and you put urine samples through it and you take clean samples out from the other side and you switch them. Like, I mean, you can't obviously do that when you go and compete in another country, but I think, I mean, who was I speaking with? Maybe Ian about this, Ian Wilson. And I was kind of saying to him, like, do you think it's possible? And he said he reckons there are probably some people who would be able to do it because, you know, you get tested, 4 times a year. You're allowed 2 missed tests before you get a strike. So you get tested on January the 1st. And the chance of getting tested again in the next 3 months is slim. I mean, they might happen. So you just go, all right, I'm going to start taking some stuff. 3 months later, they come and test you. Oh, no, like I didn't expect them to come. I'm just not going to tell them where I am. I'm going to get a strike. And then you come off, and then you say, okay, I am here. You've got a strike, but you've had 2 months of being on some sort of anabolic. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think most athletes are doing this. I really don't. I think that, you know, you take the top athletes. I mean, let's take Wes Kitts. I actually don't think he's on drugs, which is the crazy thing. Like, he's an animal. He's incredibly strong. I don't think he's on drugs. Like, I mean, if I found out that he was, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I wouldn't be blown away. But I'm more than happy to believe that someone can get to his level drug-free. I think you tend to find the most drugged athletes in USAW are probably in the B session at Nationals.
Yeah, I was actually surprised recently when Amy Hay was popped, and I think a while back, Sharice Chan, she snatched an American record, and then she got popped. It's people I've never heard of.
She snatched 93, I think, or was it 87? She was a 53 kilo. Yeah, she snatched 87 as a 53. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't surprised with Amy Hay just because the amount of rumors that were going on,
Sure.
on online about her, I just kind of thought, well, there's got to be a reason for this. There's no smoke without fire.
Right.
And there are more people getting popped in USA weightlifting now than there ever has been. There are a bunch of reasons why that might be. Just more athletes taking part in the sport, more drug tests from USADA. I mean, I don't know, but I think now that weightlifting is getting bigger and there's more money, there are more sponsorship deals, it's more likely that people are going to be taking the risks of enhancing their performance through drugs.
Right. Especially if it's going to allow you to become good enough to build a business and then make a living off of it.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's got a training team, an online training program these days. Yeah. Which, it's funny because obviously I help Glenn with his. I mean, I don't write the programming, he does it. But, when you've been in the game as long as Glenn, I kind of you have the right to do that.
Right.
You can do that because you have proven. I've had over 100 national gold medals to my name. I've sent people to the Olympics and the Worlds. Multiple athletes have broken national records. He can sell his programming. He deserves that. But when you're, an A session lifter, and maybe you've gotten bronze, maybe you've won a national championships once. Well, you know what? I'm kind of disagreeing with what I'm saying right now. I don't know if I believe what I'm saying. I think maybe anyone can have their own online team. But you've got to realize if you're going head-to-head with someone like Glenn, you're probably going to lose if you're just, a C-session lifter. But, I mean, I coach people online. I mean, I tell them that they can, they know that they could pay a little bit more and go get coaching from, Max Ater or Sean Waxman or someone like that. But, I mean, coaching online is good, but now that there is more money in the sport, you see more people, trying to build up their own personal brands and their own businesses, which is understandable because people want to make a living off something that they love. But there are a lot of programs out there now.
Well, I think about like Chad Wesley Smith has said, you need 2 of 3 qualifications. You should either have the education, have done it yourself, or have coached someone to do it. So the people you're talking about in the A session that are just great athletes and then have been coached by great coaches, and then they try to sell a programming that they didn't maybe create themselves, or they don't even know how it works. I think that's when you really fall into a problem. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. I mean, I've spoken with Glenn about this. You often find that the athletes who are the best are the worst at writing programs because they're so unbelievably talented. They've never had to question why this training program didn't work. And I've had training programs of 12 weeks where I've gotten worse. Because my body doesn't want to get strong. I've gotten worse from training hard. And so I have to just read as much as I can, learn as much as I can, how did this happen? Because that's just not acceptable to me. I have to get better. And so, I mean, Glenn said he was the same. I mean, he's very humble. He said that he wasn't a good athlete, and that's why he had to learn. I mean, he was a good athlete. He snatched 170 kilos, and he strict pressed 180. He's a very good athlete. He's very strong. But he said that his desire to be better, because he was never the best, meant that he had to learn more than anyone else. And so I think when you get an athlete who's incredibly talented, you maybe don't do the research that other athletes who are not so good do. So being a good athlete isn't enough to be a good coach, Right. I think the best way to show that you're a good coach is to coach someone to being pretty good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I'm going to try and do. If someone said, I would never claim to be a really good coach because I haven't produced a national champion yet, and I'm not a national champion yet. I'm learning and I'm training. I'm trying to be one, and I'm learning off Glenn, and I'm learning as much as I can. But until I've achieved something like that in the sport, I'm not a good coach and I'm not a good athlete.
Sure. And I'm just kind of curious, as far as programming goes, what are kind of your foundational, I don't want to say principles, but how would you develop a program?
Yeah. I've been a big fan of, Dr. I don't think he's a doctor. Carl Pierce.
Yeah.
Wrote LSUS. He said something like, become proficient at the lifts and then get as strong as possible. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the LSUS template is the best thing in the world. I don't think it's great for most people, but I appreciate his idea there. and I'm kind of famous. Well, I'm not famous for saying this, but I say it a lot. Is that the biggest difference between me and Klokov isn't our technique. If I had Klokov's technique, maybe I'd snatch 4 kilos more, maybe 5. Maybe I'd clean and jerk another 5. But the biggest difference is the fact that he can push press 225 kilos and I can press 125 kilos. The difference is that he can back squat over 300 and I'm still trying to hit a 200 kilo back squat. The biggest difference is strength. Strength is a limiting factor. The strongest man will win. There's a reason Ilya beats everyone else. It's because he can front squat 290 kilos. You've got to get strong. So when I write a program, I basically look at the athlete. If I don't know them, I get them to send me all of their numbers, and I just look at them. And I know the basic ratios. If I see something that's way off, if they have huge power snatches or huge powers and terrible full lifts, I just know that they're technically not very good. If they can't power, then they need a better pull. If they can get under their clean, they can't stand up, they need to develop their legs. And I just kind of look, where's their weakness? And then I pick exercises based on their weaknesses. I spoke to Max Zater about this last week, how people look at a blank Excel spreadsheet to write a program and they go, okay, squats. We'll put that in on Monday and Thursday because you've got to have squats. And the truth is you don't. You probably do. But you don't put exercises in because that's what a weightlifter does. You put an exercise in because they need it. I'm coaching a couple of women at the moment, and one of them, when she makes contact with the bar, she sends it out forward. So I've given her no contact snatches. So she's going to learn how to pull the bar straighter. You pick an exercise that's going to really help develop the lagging qualities in an athlete. But yeah, like I said at the start, once I have an athlete that's decent with their technique, I'm just trying to get them as strong as possible. Until you back squat 250 kilos, you're probably not going to do anything good in weightlifting.
Right. So do you think...
that's by my standard of what's good. Everyone has their own... Some people think that 100 kilo snatch is good. I don't. And that's just, we all have a different standards. But I think until you're very strong, you probably won't achieve anything that good.
So have you changed your stance on... Well, I don't know what your stance was, but on deadlifts before Glenn started implementing them? Because I'm actually starting to come around to removing a lot of the junk from a program to put in more deadlifts and strength work.
Yeah. When I started weightlifting, it's funny, when most people start weightlifting, you say to them, what exercises should you pick to get better? And they'll say deadlift to get my pull better and squats to get stronger. And then when you get into weightlifting and you hear people saying, no, you don't need a deadlift, you just need a squat. All your lifts are highly correlated off the front squat, not the deadlift. And to some extent that's true. I know people who clean 90% of their deadlift, and I know people who clean 40% of their deadlift, and they're all reasonably proficient, and so I begin to think, okay, maybe you don't need to deadlift, maybe you just need to do pulls and squats, maybe you just need to do squats, and deadlifts are irrelevant, they're going to tire you out. You hear people say you're going to get used to moving slow. That's just ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous. Pulling on a heavy deadlift isn't going to mean that when you drop down 50 kilos and try and clean, you're going to move slow.
Right.
That's stupid. If you can improve your deadlift by 20 kilos, you're probably going to pull 140 kilos clean quicker. Mm-hmm. That's just, that's how it works. So I think you ask a beginner, is a deadlift important? They'll say yes. And then you ask someone who's a year in, is a deadlift important? They'll say no. And then after a while of training, you'll begin to realize that actually, deadlifting probably is important. It's going to improve my back. It's going to improve my position, and anything that makes you stronger, as Mark Bell says, strength is never a weakness, Right. So anything that makes you strong, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I notice even for particular athletes, I have a girl that has trouble staying over the bar. Her back tinges around, and she tries to open up too early. So my question would be, adding in deadlifts would really fatigue her lower back and make her more likely to do that. But do you think it'd be more beneficial in the long run?
Yeah, so in that kind of, if you have an athlete who pulls their shoulders back early, it's because they're favoring their legs and they're laying off their back. So, you look at some Chinese lifters, they're going to pull their shoulders back early because they've got such strong squats and they don't have as big a deadlift, which is why they work on the deadlift all the time.
Sure.
Then you look at someone you look at some, I mean, I'm thinking of Yuri Vardanian right now. You freeze frame him, and he is so far over the bar. It's just unbelievable. And he had to work on his squat a lot and not his pull so much. And so I would say if you have an athlete that struggles to stay over the bar, give them deadlifts and then make them go off blocks for a while. Okay. Save their backs. Put them in a position where they don't have to continually pull off the floor just to do a snatch. You can keep the technique, the timing, the balance, the precision of the snatch by going off the high blocks. And in the meantime, build their pull from doing heavy deadlifts. Give them a taper, let them super compensate a bit, and then you put them back to the floor and they're probably going to be stronger. The thing that annoys me the most, and you probably find this as well, is when you just yell at an athlete, keep your chest up. And it's just like, just telling them that isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
There's a reason that I can't snatch 130 kilos at the moment, is because I can't keep my snatch up. I can't keep my chest up. Mm-hmm. Yelling at me to keep my chest up isn't going to help me do it.
Right.
I think that there's a point where technical breakdown comes from a lack of specific muscular strength. Mm-hmm. And that oftentimes saying keep your chest up works until the point where you just can't keep your chest up.
Right.
Because your lower back is weak. And then you have to do 3 sets of 10 hip extension to build the lower back, or some pull-ups to build the upper back, or some extra glute hams to build a hamstring, or extra front squats to build the quads. I think technical cues are almost the most overrated thing in weightlifting. I think you just got to get people stronger in the right places.
Sure. I agree. I agree completely. And
unless you're a real beginner, and then you've got to give them technical cues. But I'm assuming you've been in the sport for more than 6 months and you generally know how to do the lifts, and then, you've got to get strong.
Right. And just to keep the podcast from running, far too much over time.
I just said that I had an hour 20. I mean, man, I love weightlifting. I talk about this all day. I mean, we're going for another 3 hours for all I care.
Right, and that's the problem.
I'm not joking. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking.
Yeah, that's the problem.
As soon as this is done, I'm just going to get back on with work and weightlifting house stuff. I mean, I get up at 6:30 and I just work, and then I do a podcast, and then I work, and then I go to bed at 10:30, finishing work, get up, and I carry on. Weightlifting is, I eat and I breathe weightlifting. So let's just go as long as you have.
Okay.
I'm not going to put this podcast to a stop.
Well, I have a section at the end of every podcast of questions that are a little more philosophical, a little bit more kind of out of the box. So I'll quickly run through those with you. So besides the physical improvements that you gain from weightlifting, why do you think everyone should strength train or resistance train, and what has doing that done for you?
That's a phenomenal question. It does two things. It reveals your character and it builds your character. And I don't know which of the two it does more. I think when I first started out, I loved it because I used to say to everyone, it really builds character. And to some extent it does. You learn to work hard and you learn to relish hard training. But the more I've done and the more I've seen other people train, the more I think that it actually just reveals your personality. I mean, I was always going to train hard. I just love it. I love the hardest training sessions. When I was a rower, I got into the top boat because I went in and trained twice a day and everyone else trained once a day, and everyone just rowed and I did strength training and cycling and an extra row every day. I will just always work hard. And I see people who train who have huge amounts of talent and they don't want to do 5x5 on the squat, or they don't want to do 3 sets of 10 on the squat because it's hard. And it doesn't develop their character because they just moan and they just whinge about it. It just reveals, you go to the gym and it shows you that you're just a badass. You want to train hard. There are people who probably train harder than me, I'm sure. And because of that, they're more of a badass than me. The reason I love weightlifting is because when I go to a competition, if I beat someone, I can look at them and think to myself, I worked harder than you. I deserve this. And when someone beats me, I just think to myself, they deserve that. They're better than me. They worked harder than me. I'm not relying on a team like when you're in a team sport and you can blame it on other people. If someone beats me, they're better than me. So I think weightlifting, it develops, it reveals who you really are. there's something so humble about going into the gym and training and having a bad day for 3 months on end. I've been there. I've trained for 3 months and come home and felt depressed. Like just like, what's happening to me? Why am I so tired? Why can't I lift? Why is my technique bad? Why am I getting weaker in the squat? And the fact that, 3 months later, I'm still going back because for some reason I'm addicted to the pain and I'm addicted to the effort, it reveals that in you. And maybe I wouldn't have known that if I'd never gone to the gym. But a lot of people, they go to the gym and they have a bad week, which brings me back to what I said right at the start, where I'm worried about this for my lifters, is they're going to have a bad week and they're going to quit. And the people who don't quit, weightlifting has just revealed that. It didn't build it. The people who are going to quit are going to quit. And the people who keep going are just the kind of people I want to spend my time with.
Well, this is turning out to be a much better podcast than I could have anticipated. Like, these are phenomenal answers. I feel everything that you're saying right now. It took me 11 months to PR my back squat, and every time you go in and you're doing something that you've already done before, and you have to do it over and over and over again, and you can never surpass that one point in time when you hit a PR. You can't surpass it for a year or 2 years. Yeah. I think that's what makes it worth it when you finally do.
Oh man, I mean, people talk about I haven't PR'd in a month. I mean, I haven't PR'd either the snatch, clean and jerk, power snatch, power clean, front squat, or back squat. The last time I PR'd any of those 6 movements was 18 months ago.
Yeah.
Because I've been injured. I haven't PR'd my back squat in coming up 2 years. I'm not joking. Because I've been injured. I get back to it and I get injured. I'm coming back up and I get injured. I'm not going to stop because I just completely believe that I'm going to squat 250 kilos one day.
Right.
I'm just not going to stop. No one's going to be able to stop me. I just want to keep training.
Right.
And when people say I did a training cycle and it didn't work, I just think, well, just try another one.
Right.
Just keep training.
Oh my God.
Just do another one.
It's that simple.
Just go. It's that simple. Like, it winds me up that people don't put in the effort that you have to put in if you really want to do something impressive in the sport. You know what I mean? Like, just man up and work harder. That's what it comes down to. Put in the work. If things aren't going right, don't blame other people. Don't blame the environment. Don't blame all these external factors. It's on you. Like, you can go to sleep earlier. You can stretch more. You can eat better food, and you can train harder. And there's no excuse for it. Like, and if you don't want to put in all that stuff, that's fine. Like, I don't expect anyone to be as obsessed as me. Like, the people that I coach don't care about weightlifting as much as me. I probably care about them hitting a PR more than they care about them hitting a PR. And that's fine. I don't expect that. As long as they don't moan about it and they say, like, oh, I wish I was doing better, well, then try harder. But if they're not moaning, then I don't mind if you train twice a week and love it and then go and eat bad food and go out and do clubbing. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'm just not going to do it. It's just not me. I'm not going to go out,
Right. Yeah, and I had a podcast yesterday and we talked about expectations. And he's an online coach, and he kind of said, like, honestly, the same thing you just said.
I saw a post about that.
It is Greg Ferris.
Who was that again? Yeah, I saw. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm going to do that.
Yeah, it's good. And he just talks about expectations, and he's like, it's the same thing you said. If they just want to come in 3 days a week, they want to be healthy, and that's their expectation, that's fine. But if you tell them you want to go to the CrossFit Games, you want to go to the Olympics, you better come in twice a day, and you better train your ass off. And if you don't reach it, that's your own fault.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question I have is if you could have 5 people, dead or alive, over for dinner, who would they be?
Oh, wow. It's funny because I started doing some written interviews with a few weightlifters, and I used to say to them, if you could sit and have a meal with any 2 weightlifters, who would it be?
Okay.
And I always wanted them to give me good answers, and now that you've asked me, I've never really considered it.
Yeah.
Did you say 2 weightlifters or 2 people?
Just people in general.
Sorry, 5 weightlifters or 5 people?
Just people in general. I'm assuming they'll be weightlifters, though.
Yeah, I mean, most of them would be. I mean, you know what? I have such an addictive personality that my answer now will be different from my answer 5 years ago. I mean, it would be different from my answer 5 months ago. If you'd have asked me this a month ago, I would have included Elon Musk. If you ask me now, which you have done, I'm not going to even mention him. But, okay, sticking to weightlifters, I mean, I'm going to go with Ilya.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by him. In fact, I'm flying out to Kazakhstan in March, I think. My dad lives there. It's like a really random thing, but he happens to live there, and I've never been out there. So I'm going to fly out there and I'm going to message Ilya and say, I'm coming. I'm going to be wherever you live. So we need to do an interview. So Ilya would be one of them. I would pick, I'd probably pick an amazing weightlifting coach. I'd probably pick like David Roger, the Russian coach, because he was such an amazing weightlifter and now he's such a good coach. Oh God, this is... I'd probably pick Donnie.
Yeah.
If you can get him talking. I mean, when I met Donnie, he was like the shyest guy in the world. It was really bizarre. He was so quiet. He didn't say anything. But he just dominated the room. Like, when he was in the room, it was... when Donnie first turned up, we all sat in the room in silence. No one said a thing. And me and my friends were all like messaging each other like, someone say something. And eventually someone plucked up the courage and said something, and Donnie replied, and then it just goes silence again. And he just but when you get him going, and he talks about training and how to become a champion, it's just some of the most motivating things you could ever hear. Other than that, I'd probably pick maybe Rostami, the Iranian 85 total world record holder. I'm just fascinated by him and his mindset. And then, let's go with someone, Naeem, who just passed away, Naeem Suleimanali.
Yeah.
By every marker, the best weightlifter of all time. 7 world championships, 7 world gold medals, 3 Olympics, could have been 4, could have been 5, 47 world records, just unbelievably dominant. And Abajev, I'd love to talk with Abajev. Both of them passed away in the last year, 2 big losses for the weightlifting world. Yeah, I actually named my car Abajev because the day that I bought it was the day that Abajev died. So I call my car Abajev. Yeah, it's fun. It's good until I say that I'm going to go have a ride in Abajev, and then it gets a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But those would probably be my 5 weightlifters. Outside of that, I'm interested in I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot because I love podcasts. So I like to talk to him, or I love to talk with Gary Vaynerchuk because he's big in business and how to turn what you love into a lifestyle kind of thing.
Right.
There are a bunch of people that I get fascinated by. I mean, I've been fascinated by David Blaine.
Oh yeah.
The magician.
Yeah.
I'm literally just, if you find someone who is the best in their field, I'll listen to them. I'll listen to an Elon Musk lecture about space for an hour and have no idea what he's talking about. But I'm so fascinated by the authority that he's able to speak with.
Right.
When people are high up in their field, that blows me away. That's what I love. So whether you're a magician or a politician or a weightlifter, if you are the best in your field, I find you interesting. I'll probably listen.
Right. Going back to Donnie Schenkel, I actually have an interesting story. When he was living in New York and he was coaching in Warwick CrossFit or Warwick weightlifting. And I live in Ohio, so it's like a 7-hour drive. So we drive up one weekend and we go up there and we get there late at night. So we sleep in the car. It's like winter time, so it's like
that's pretty cool.
It's like 20 degrees Fahrenheit around there. And we wake up, we go in, and the problem was I had the greatest opportunity, but I was only snatching 100 and clean and jerking 120. So I go in and I go to train with him, and we lifted. He's very quiet, as you kind of mentioned. And then after the fact, they had a Christmas party, and he started drinking a little bit.
Yeah, he does that. Yeah, he has a way with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he was asking me what my body weight was, and I told him I was like a light 85, and he got really upset and started yelling around the gym.
Yeah.
That I needed to eat food, and he was.
Yeah, man, he'll do that.
Yeah, he's like yelling at people. He's like, "This guy didn't eat breakfast," and he was like screaming at me, and I'm like, "I was sleeping in a car." It's like I didn't have breakfast, and and he told me some awesome stories, about training to be a champion, and it was a really fun experience, man. Donnie's an interesting character.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason I like Donnie is because he's big into the mindset.
Yeah.
And I mean, as much as I say that you've got to get strong, it all starts with your mindset. And I mean, I'm just so big into that. Some of the things that he said about, put another kilo on the bar, and that's what weightlifting is. It's just the same process, the same shit over and over and over again. Things that he said, things that Abajev have said about, how, a good weightlifter is like a bulldog. Like when a bulldog, I think it was a bulldog, something like that. When a bulldog is faced with a lion, it doesn't consider the fact that it's probably going to lose and therefore it's going to run away. The only thing it knows is to attack with 100% certainty that it's going to win. Whether it wins or not is another story, but that's its mindset. And that's how you got to be when you're approaching a bar. You don't know if you're going to, there's got to be no fear in your mind when you approach a bar. But you've just got to think to yourself, I'm going to do this.
But I can say from experience that when you're stronger, it's easier to have that confidence. If your technique is what's driving your ability to lift those weights, it's it's more difficult to commit to a heavy clean if you don't have leg strength or you don't have a pulling power.
Yeah.
If you don't get your elbows around, you're done.
Yeah. I mean, I know. I see what you're saying. I mean, the thing is, there were probably points in Donnie's training where he said, "No, I'm not going to go for that." Because he wasn't feeling it. But in general, people need to be a little bit less scared and just care a little bit more about lifting. I mean, it's not for everyone. I'm so extreme on the spectrum, but I do agree that, that there's momentum involved, and the better things are going, the better things are going to go. And if you can get some momentum going, you're going to do better things than you thought. Yeah.
And I have one. Actually, I have two questions.
Go
to finish up. So, what are some resources that inside of or outside of weightlifting or strength training that you would recommend to all listeners to maybe improve mindset or just to improve their basic experience of life?
Yeah. Resources in weightlifting, I would say that it's very worthwhile to read the old Soviet texts. They've all been translated by Andrew Charnager, nicknamed Bud Charnager. You can find those. They've all got free downloads of that. I don't know if they're illegal or not. I don't know. I can't send them. But you can find them all online, and you can read all the research that the Russians wrote in the 60s and 70s. That's fascinating. I learned a whole lot from that. And then, my biggest bit of advice to basically everyone is to listen to podcasts. And I've been saying that far longer than I've been doing a podcast. And I've only been doing one for 6 months. But I started listening to podcasts because I didn't have any weightlifting friends. This was like before I knew anyone else who did weightlifting. So I listened to a podcast on weightlifting, John North's podcast, Weightlifting Talk. We've all listened to it. And that got me into podcasting, and then I started listening to Travis Mash's podcast and Barbell Shrugged, and then the Jug Life, the Two Doctors, everything. The Philosophical Weightlifting, I've listened to a bunch of yours as well. And then I branched out of weightlifting, and I started listening to Tim Ferriss' podcast, where he talks to highly successful people and tries to understand the traits and the patterns of highly successful people, what personality traits lend themselves to being successful. And I listen to that because I want to know what I need to do or what I can do that's going to help me be more successful in life. I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast because I can listen to some random scientist talk about CERN or the Large Hadron Collider or why mushrooms are really important in the development of the brain, or like random things like that. Like it's amazing how much you can learn. It's just amazing. And the fact that it's a passive form of learning is the best thing. Like when I drive to and from the gym every day, I'm listening to a podcast. When I'm cooking, I'm listening to a podcast. Yeah. When I go to the toilet, I'm listening to a podcast. Like I do nothing. If I'm not working or training, I'm listening to a podcast. And that way I can consume 4 or 5 hours of people's content that I look up to, that they've spent a long time learning. And I just get to listen to that. I can just digest that. That's just amazing. So my biggest bit of advice to everyone is listen to podcasts. Podcasts are phenomenal. I think they're going to be the way of the future. I think they're only going to get bigger because they save time compared to video. When you watch a video, you have to watch it. You can do nothing but watch it. Now with podcasts, you can go and do stuff whilst you're listening. Listen to podcasts, pick a topic you're interested in, be it politics or education or reading, whatever, and just listen to it, and you can just learn so much more in the 6 hours that you're not doing anything in your day. Yeah. I know I went on a ramble there, but like I just can't get over how amazing podcasts can be for learning. They've done a huge wonders for me.
No, I agree. I take the exact same approach, and of course I got started with weightlifting talk, and that was kind of my introduction to podcasts, and now I'm absolutely obsessed. So kind of banking off that question, removing listening to podcasts, what is one thing you would recommend to people to do each day to improve their lives?
Get up early. Getting up early is the most important thing to being successful, I think, in the world. I mean, I convinced myself a while ago that I could get up at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and be successful, and it's not true. You know, when I first met Glenn, he got up at 6 a.m. every day. And so I decided, well, no one else would get up then. Everyone else would get up at 7 or 8. So I figured I'm going to have an hour just one-on-one with him. So I got up at 6 every day, met him at 6 and had coffee. And then when he came to the UK and lived with me, we got up at, I get up at 5:30 so that there'd be breakfast and coffee on the table every day and we could work. And I mean, he basically said to me, when you're up early, there's something about that. There's something that does to your mind where you just think you're getting stuff done. And so ever since then, I'm a big believer in get up way before you need to, I mean, I don't have anything in my day that I have to do, really, other than coaching. Like, I've got some coaching tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Before that, I can do anything. I could sleep until 6 p.m. if I wanted to, but I'll get up at 5:30 in the morning, go to the gym. I'm at the gym at 7 a.m. I train, I come back, and then I'm just working all day. And I just... I don't give myself 20 minutes to sit on YouTube anymore. I don't dilly-dally reading random things. Like, I'm just working all day. I think getting up, starting your day with, an early morning is the most... If you want to achieve something big in life, get up early. Yeah. It's not always the best for weightlifters. I mean, if you're going to get up early, you got to get to bed on time. But just having the discipline to get to bed early, there's that phrase, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Yeah. And if you can start your day early, you can achieve a whole lot. Yeah.
That's huge. And I think a lot of people don't really consider that. From anecdote myself, I know that when I get up early, I just feel like I want to get work done. Whereas when I get up at 11, it's like I just kind of want to take my time and just...
It's like you've wasted half of the day, so you might as well waste the rest of it. Yeah.
Right.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I'm interested. I don't want to become the podcaster right now. You're the one doing the interview, but what would you say? Like, what outside of weightlifting, outside of podcasts, what's the one thing that you would say to people that can most improve, their day?
That is tough. That's actually a very good question. I never really considered a good answer, but I would think it's just to create something each day. Create something that's your own. Because a lot of people get kind of tied into developing things for other people, working for other people, and they don't have anything that they can say, I made this from nothing. I built this from the ground up. I mean, whether it's a painting, whether it's a podcast, whether it's an article, or, whether it's like a PR you hit in the gym, which you've developed your skills to do. Yeah. That just gives you this self fulfillment and like entitlement that you can't get anywhere else, because we're always consuming, right? Even with podcasts, we're always consuming podcasts. So to create it, there's just a satisfaction beyond,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have people listening, I like to think that I would still do it. Yeah. I don't know I can't say that I would, but I like to think that I would. I get so much satisfaction out of doing something. Like before I started Weightlifting House, I would be really happy, just putting the wash on, cleaning my room. Yeah. I'd feel so happy the fact that I'd done it. It would just spur me to do something else. Right. Doing something real every day is so important,
Yeah, and I kind of going off of that, when I first started podcasting, I literally had like this iPad, and I would just hit record and I would just talk into it, maybe while I was driving around in a car or something. Yeah. And I would have no topic. I would just talk. Yeah. And I did 20 episodes. No one would listen to it. Maybe 5 to 10 views. And then I started podcasting with my buddy that was a weightlifter, and we had like a weightlifting talk, pseudo weightlifting talk podcast going.
Sure.
And we'd get like 30 to 40 listens, and we did those for like 15, 20 episodes. And then I restarted everything, and then I started bringing guests on, and now I get over 200 every episode. One has like 1,300, which isn't a lot,
nice.
But
I mean, that is a lot. That is a lot. The fact that many people are giving, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that you and I can think that we're going to talk and someone's going to listen
right.
to us. And the fact that there are 1,300 people who gave you an hour of their time
right.
to listen to something that you've created, that's amazing. Like it is phenomenal that you can do that and that you were able to start like that. I mean, I had an easier run in that sense that because my first ever episode is with Glenn,
right.
I'm immediately going to get people listen to it. Like the fact that you started it and you had no one, like you just clicked record, talked, and then built an audience. That is, I mean, it's amazing. It's just amazing.
I think
it really is.
Even though you say when you brought Glenn on, you'd have this immediate audience, but like there's a certain aspect of marketing that has to go into it to expose people to it.
Yeah.
Because I can release a podcast and I'll get 10 listens, but if I put it on Reddit, suddenly that boosts that by like 300 to 400. So it's just getting the right exposure.
I mean, that's the thing with Reddit. I don't know what the rules are. Like, I have never posted a podcast on Reddit because I'm worried that it's going to get taken down.
Here's the secret.
But I would love to.
Here's the secret.
I would love to.
I'm going to expose you to potentially thousands of listens. Go to the CrossFit thread.
Oh, yes, please.
Go to the CrossFit thread and post it. They won't remove it, and people will listen to it. That's the only thread I've found that will let you post your podcast.
Good idea.
Yep.
That's a good idea.
That's it.
That's a great idea. I might do that.
Yeah,
that's
dude.
Smart, man.
I'm going to do it with this podcast. So
please do. Yeah, that would be wicked.
But now we've pretty much finished all the formal questions I've written out. Now, as far as plugs go, you have a lot of websites, resources, and stuff you can talk about. So go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, where they can get your products, where they can get your coaching, all that.
Yeah, I mean that's kind. I mean, in terms of products, I'm still kind of working it out. Like I sold these YB Normal t-shirts. They did pretty well.
Yeah.
And I've currently not got them on my site because I put in a bunch of orders, but they'll be back on in a week. But I'm trying a few things out, and like I said at the start, Glenn and I are sorting some things out. So stay tuned for that. But I mean, for my stuff, it's just the Weightlifting House podcast. That's my main thing that I work on. The weightliftinghouse.com. I've got articles which I write, which a bunch of other people write, which you're starting to write for, which is great. The Instagram page is the one that's probably done the best in terms of sheer numbers. It's been up for 6 months and it's over 12,000 followers now, which is pretty cool. It's just Weightlifting House anything. Weightliftinghouse.com, Weightlifting House on Snapchat, Weightlifting House on Instagram, podcast. Just type it in and I'm probably going to be there somewhere.
Yeah, and then as far as coaching from Glenn and yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so you can... it's called the Pendlay WOD. It's on Train Heroic. Glenn does all the writing for it, so don't get worried and think that I'm going to be writing your program. It is Glenn. It's not me. I just help him because he's so bad with online technology stuff that I do all of that kind of thing. But if you type in the discount code Weightlifting House, no spaces, no capital letters, you do get 20% off on any of his strong programs. So that's kind of like a cool little thing that I have just from people who are on my website. Like they see that and they just, it's a nice thing I'm able to offer people. But Pendlay WOD is, I mean, you're on it now. It is amazing.
Oh yeah,
it's a great program. If you're not willing to work exceptionally hard, well, it's not. You don't have to work exceptionally hard. I mean, there are 3, 4, 5 day programs, but if you want an easy program, it's not for you, and that's fine. Like you and I both said, if you don't want to work as hard as we do, that's okay. Like each to their own. But if you are one of those people who wants to push it really hard and actually make a whole lot of progress, those are the programs that I'd recommend. Yeah, Pendlay WOD on Train Heroic.
Yeah, and if you're a competitive weightlifter and you want to show up on meet day and be prepared, you should definitely sign up because you don't want to say to the other guy that beat you, well, you worked harder than I did. So
exactly, yeah, exactly.
It's nothing fancy. It's basic, but it's hard. So
yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on, Seb, giving your time.
Well, thank you so much. It's like a milestone for me. I've listened to so many podcasts. I've always wanted to be the guest on one.
Yeah.
People listen to my podcast more for the other people. It's not so much me. It's the fact that I'm interviewing cool people or I'm delivering the news on weightlifting.
Right.
And so, it's pretty cool that I was able to come on this. I really appreciate it. I've had more fun than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
I love it. And as you can tell, I can't stop talking. Like I just weightlifting. I can't stop talking about it.
Well, like I was saying before, I'm genuinely surprised by how phenomenal your answers are, and how much of a different perspective you take on all these questions, because I had a very short outline. I didn't think it'd be much, and then here we are an hour and 45 minutes in.
Man, it happens, doesn't it? It just happens. I get some guests and it just pops. Like, I just talk and I look at the time and I have to stop because, well, they've got lives that they've got to get on with.
Right.
But sometimes you just get going and, In fact, is that me or is that you who's being called? That's probably me.
Oh, that's you, yeah.
And it's probably Glenn. Yeah, it is, yeah. Glenn's always calling me. It's ridiculous. Whenever he needs help with something, he calls me and just says, can you put up for me, or can you message this person or whatever? But
that's one
I'll
thing.
Get back to it.
When I got a text from Glenn Pinley, I was like, I've done something right in life for this to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I got a random Facebook message the other day from Ian Wilson, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, that's pretty cool. Like, he's just sending me a video of a lift, like, what do you think? It's like, that's nice. That's like, sweet. I feel like I've made it when someone like just decides to message me out of the blue. That's pretty cool.
Well, awesome, Seb. And,
anyway, man, I appreciate you having me on so much. And I'm just going to say, like, I think what you're doing is amazing. I think that you and I have kind of connected because we're pretty similar. We're just on different continents.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we're obsessed with trying to be good weightlifters, but more than that, we're obsessed with the process and trying to help people in understanding the process of getting a weightlifting. You don't have to get better. It's almost about how it develops your mindset, how it makes you a stronger person, how it kind of bleeds out into all aspects of life.
Right.
I'm obsessed with it, and you're obsessed with it, and that's why we're going to start doing some work together, and hopefully we can, produce something pretty cool over the coming years.
I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited.
To do that. Yeah.
Again, I appreciate it, and so we can stop here. I'm just going to sign off the podcast. I'll end the recording, and then we can say our goodbyes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so thanks for listening, guys. This was an awesome episode with Seb from Weightlifting House. Go check out his stuff. Phenomenal information and resource for weightlifting. Thanks again for listening. If you like it, go give it a like, share, subscribe. There will be many more podcasts to come, and hopefully great information from here on out. So thanks, guys.
And there we have it. That was a terrific episode of the show. Guys, if you made it this far, well, I appreciate your time, because that's quite a long show that I just did there with Josh. But like I'm sure you can appreciate after having listened to it, it was an amazing time that the two of us had. We spoke about so many great and interesting topics with regards to weightlifting. I can't thank him enough for allowing me to pilfer his episode from a few months ago for my own benefit. So, big props to him for that. If you like his style and if you like the podcast, you want to check out more that Josh has done, like I mentioned at the start of the show, you can follow him at the Philosophical Podcast. That's up basically anywhere that you find podcasts. Also, follow him on Instagram. I want to say his Instagram is Josh PDP, something like that. PDP. Type in, just go on to, go on to Weightlifting House Instagram. Go on who I follow. Type in Josh. I only follow like 200 people, so it's not hard to find. And follow him there and send him a message and thank him for the good work that he did. Guys, thanks once again for tuning in. I will be back on my normal schedule from now. New show on Wednesday, Sinclair Countdown on Friday, and back into some good old-fashioned Weightlifting House weightlifting podcasts.